Hi. What a busy day. Yeah, starting like a second late or so. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's what are we looking at here? I've, literally, my brain is in a minor fog about like where I am sitting in the weeks. I don't, I don't know if that makes sense. Part of being in the mode of like aggressively looking for work, like time just goes out the window because I don't have the more like usual schedule that I'm used to where it's like here's my cadence of the day, work, etc. It's a completely different cadence, and it's my perception of time has gone way out the window. I also need to silence my phone. Can you tell how prepared I am not? Yeah. Okay. There you go. Problem solved. Uh okay. So, let me get the last couple things before we go into topic briefly. I will be on live stream tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific with Dr. Mazerall of the Amazon Research Center. So, that's going to be fun. um, so if you're around and you want to just listen in or something, maybe while you're doing your own work grind, check that out. It's 10 a.m. Pacific start time, so we're both West Coast people. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna babble about some fishy things. I think a lot of plant stuff. That'd be good. Um, yeah, I think that's about it. I want to talk about the topic. So, preface here. Last Saturday, I saw some of you in person, but I went to my local club's auction. We have kind of two auctions each year. Well, each year, pandemic really messed with that. We have our general auction, which happens in April, and then we have a like kind of only plant and livestock auction in November. This was the biggest, I think, auction GSAS, the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, has ever had. It was pretty nuts. I actually left early. Full disclosure, I was watching how big the crowd was, and almost everything that I was like kind of interested in, if I got the right price on it, I would have jumped on it. Not even close. There was just so many new people, which is fantastic, right? Events like that are really great from a club perspective of potentially getting new members because they see how many things come into auction or what have you. It's an opportunity to talk to other members. Maybe they know various people in the room. Maybe they were like, oh, that's Alex from Secret History living inside your aquarium, or that's Master Breeder Dean. Whatever it may be, the number of people who are there in like their club gear, who are helping volunteer and stuff, doing basically fantastic outreach to help the club. It's an opportunity to get things. And the reason why I'm talking about this is not because that event was so successful. It was so successful, I didn't buy anything. I bought goose egg, absolutely zero items. And I kind of liked it at the same time in the sense that it was like I spent a lot of time talking to some people. There was a gentleman I met, which, Rich, if you're watching, hi. But I had met Rich before, and it had been before the pandemic when I did my first ever club talk. So if you've ever watched an informal talk about plants video that I put up, I had met him there. And that was when there was a small kind of fledgling club trying to start up called the North Sound Aquarium Society. And, we talked back and forth and we talked about a ton of things. And one of the things that lingers in my mind to today so far, so, we're talking most of a week already, from Saturday into Tuesday, right? This has lingered in my head the entire time that interaction is, this person had such a positive experience, and we babbled all sorts of things, fish and not fish, that they remember that one meeting so well, specifically to come up and talk about it to me, like as a fledgling YouTuber in the grand scheme of things, right? Compared to the big boys, I'm a fledgling, right? That meant a lot to me. And so the thing that I thought about is, like, how many events like that have I done where it's not necessarily about the items that show up, although sometimes you get some amazing stuff. There was this enormous piece of driftwood, as an example. Huge. I mean, this thing had to have been like 3 foot. Just this huge, chunky piece. So somebody who had like a big, large tank would be perfect for this. Or if you're trying to like feed a bunch of wood-eating plecos, right? It went for $18. And the only reason I didn't bid on it, because it was a steal. It was a steal at that price compared to what you would normally pay to purchase any kind of driftwood, right? Is because I didn't have a tank big enough for it. It's really what it came down to. I guess I could have put it in my like retirement tank, but that's already kind of full of hardscape as far as like what I want in it. But there were some things like that, right? There were some great things that came at good prices. Just not necessarily the stuff that, like, say, I particularly was after. But the whole time I was at that event, there was lots of people, like Sean Davison, who's in chat, right? People that I haven't seen in a while that are maybe not as, like, hardcore members of the club, or maybe they're just locals that I've met at other local events. And it's that social atmosphere of some of these events that is what makes them amazing. And a great similar example, I used to, pre-pandemic, we haven't really had one since then, but pre-pandemic, we had a number of different swaps throughout the year that also happened. Portland, I think, has some, is the closest that I have now, and I might try to go to one just because they're so much fun for me. But there's something about that atmosphere where it's just a ton of fish nerds at not like big events. I'm not talking like your Aquashellas. I'm talking about like something like Fishtoberfest, the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association swap. Like, these events have a good number of people, right? But not necessarily like thousands of people. Even I would say Triple Crown in some regards when I was there, and they did the big like day swap where people could get tables and put their stuff out and all those things. Those events are great, not only if you're trying to find something cool and interesting that you're hoping for. Maybe it's a plant you've never kept, or it's a fish species that like, I know this one person is going to be there and they're going to have like XYZ fish and I'm after it. Or it's just kind of like, looking to be surprised. I want something different that I don't normally see in my local fish store, but seems cool enough that I would really want to engage with that fish and keep that fish or plant or whatever the heck it may be, right? There was one of the coolest things I saw. This is going to be very random. I apologize to you up front. This will be a fairly random talk. But you'll get the vibe of like the wonderful positivity ringing in my head that makes me want to talk about this stuff. We're all familiar with kind of wabikusas, but if you're not, just in case, Replay Crew live chat, wabikusa is really simple. Typically, it's a very small, like cube tank or a bowl. You might have a very thin layer of water in it. It's kind of a big clay ball with plants stuck into it that will grow immersed. It's a style of based on some Japanese concepts of kind of making this small, dedicated plant thing. It's just this really small, like, decorative plant thing. It's kind of like living art. Very cool. Someone brought in a couple of different wabikusas that they had built inside of emptied out whiskey bottles that they called whiskey kusas. And all I could think of was like, this is just genius from the perspective of bringing in something kind of unique and different that somebody would be like, hey, that's cool. That's different. I would like to have one of these, right? And I could see somebody doing that like at a fish swap level. You know, you go get a bunch of empty whatever kind of bottles. Maybe you got a rum bottle, a whiskey bottle, whatever it may be. But having these cool little living pieces of art, and instead of being inside a simple like cube aquarium or something like that, it's something a little more interesting and different that someone could display in a way that's a little more interesting and has a kind of weird story to it in a sense. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the part about small events like this, whether it's if you don't have a fish club that's local, maybe there's some swaps, and if they're within driving range. And to me, within driving range is like 4 hours. I'm a crazy person. I am willing to drive a large amount of way to go to a really good fish event. But I like small fish events. So like for me, Aquashella is not a huge draw. The draw of Aquashella is just sitting around socializing with folks. But like small fish swaps, if you have small events, so like some of the smaller conventions that do have like their vendor rooms and things like that, where they'll have a mixture of local businesses and other folks. The Triple Crown is a great example of that. Fishtoberfest is a great example of that. The events in that style, and those things are, I think, some of the best parts of the social aspect of the fish hobby, because you can go around and you can peruse tables and you can talk to these vendors, and a lot of times you'll meet all these small businesses that you had no idea they existed, right? A great example for me is when I was at Fishtoberfest. I had not taken the time the first year I went to talk to the folks at Shrimp Envy, where last year when I went, I made sure to talk to them. And they've been a vendor at the event both years so far. I'm sure they'll be at the upcoming one later this year. But it was one of those things where I got to talk to people, and just that social atmosphere, getting to understand what they do. They're a shrimp business. Yes, you would think that's that simple, but sometimes it's the choices they make, how they choose to do things, and you can have those conversations. Because at those small events, there aren't the massive crowds. You have the ability to sit and talk to a vendor for 15, 20 minutes, right? You can get a feel for them a little bit better, kind of understand the things that they do, what makes them interested. And even if it's just like a small local breeder who bought a table at something like that, that is something that is different and interesting, and I think special about these events. So that's why I would say, for me, 4-hour drives for something like that, worth it every time. Like Fishtoberfest is kind of about a 3-hour drive. And I'll put quotation marks around 3-hour drive. It from where I'm at, it's about 2.5 hours actually, but often there's enough traffic that slows you down in some spots that it becomes 3 hours. And then from there, there's other events that occasionally happen in Southern Oregon, and we start looking at like a 6-hour drive for those, and I'm almost tempted to hit those. Which, by the way, if for some reason there's stuff in Idaho or the other side of Washington that I don't know about, and you do, email me, bentley.pasco@gmail.com. Tell me, because I want to go check these things out. Some of my club events are amazing. Like I'll tell you this story. I know this is super rambly, folks, but stay with me for a minute, and then we'll get into questions and answers, okay? I first joined my aquarium club for one reason alone, but I found a new reason quickly, right? They were having a picnic in July, and we do a picnic every July, but I didn't know about that when I was first getting back into the hobby. And I was like, hey, this picnic that has this like informal plant swap thing, this sounds fun. This sounds interesting. I can just go babble with fish nerds. I'm starting to get back into this hobby and the swing of things pretty fast. I want to do this. So I became a member solely to go, which granted, our membership is like $15 a year. It's cheap, right? But I became a member just to go to this picnic that had a small plant swap. And the way the plant swap worked, it was like you bring a bag of plants, you just put it on a table, and then you get a raffle ticket. And we call numbers, and you get to go up and pick something on the table, so that everybody's kind of doing this big swap of picking out things that they don't have, or maybe they just like. Everybody's bringing something a little different typically, or it's like, 5 people bring the same thing, whatever it may be. But a lot of people end up bringing lots of different stuff because it's a little more fun to bring that thing that somebody is like really excited about, because it's different than what they have, right? And I think events like this are what brought me into the hobby even deeper. And look how much of a psycho I am in this hobby now, right? Like, I think those are some of the best things. Another example, we do raffles, right, at a lot of our big events. So like the auctions, we always have raffles. You can buy, it's like a bucket ticket, or for $20 you get 25 tickets, is very common. They had a was it the Fluval Spec, I think, the kind of longer pre-kit like this, but I think it was the saltwater variant of it that had been donated as a raffle prize. And I was sitting talking with Rich at this point, and I think we've been talking for like 20 minutes or so at that point. And they draw for the raffle, and a family won it, but they made sure that their very young son, he couldn't have been more than like 6-7 years old, got to turn in the ticket and get the prize, right? And you could just see how excited this little kid was to get this little fish tank, right? Because it's fun, you want a prize, all those kind of things. I think about when we're little kids, right? Winning anything, you almost don't care what it is, at the fact that you won. That's what's more important. And for me, I was sitting talking with Rich, and one of the things I remember very distinctly, because we were both like, oh, that's awesome, this little kid won. I said, you know what? I would be happy losing a raffle every time if they always went to young aquarists. If they always went to young hobbyists, I would be very happy. Because moments like that, I remember them in my head, and they're such a positive experience, more so than being the person that wins the raffle. And you might be like, oh, that's cute or sweet of you, but it's one of those things where I think these parts of our hobby, these social aspects that help bring in new people, or even might expose us to things that we never thought were interesting. Some of the plants that I've got came from auctions and ended up becoming some of my favorite plants I've ever kept. There's been a number of different fish species that I've kept over time that I picked up at an auction randomly, whether it was a club meeting or a bigger auction, or I went to a swap and talked to somebody, whatever it may be, some smaller event, and got an opportunity to meet people and get some stuff that I've just never had before, I'd never see in a fish store, stuff like that, that have changed and effectively shaped the way that I approach this hobby, the things that I love the most about this hobby. And that's why I'm a massive advocate for small events. Now, unfortunately, I can't attend every small event. Example, Leo was talking recently in the member Discord, which if you're a member at the Pseudo Guild level or higher, you get access to the member Discord. If you'd like to join, I wholly encourage you to do so. You basically only have to be a member for a single month, and you can be in the Discord for eternity, because I don't audit it. So, that's a little secret. It's also kind of like my bat phone, but we were babbling a little bit, and there's the fish dig. So it's kind of shindig, fish, merge it two, right? That's happening down in the Sacramento area. And he was asking if I was going to go to that. And of course, part of this, there's things that, my life they're impacting with me being laid off to make it so I just can't go because of timing. But for me, it was one of those things was like, I also like I would be interested in that event a lot if it weren't for if it were drivable, put it that way. And which, given my vehicle being electric, a like 12-hour drive in a standard gasoline vehicle is almost impossible to do in an electric without losing like multiple days of time. Just in the round trip, that is. So, it was one of those things where there's some other small reasons, but that's the primary reason is basically like the travel is not drivable. So I'd literally have to fly, and flying is very bloody expensive. But I would encourage all of you, and I know for some of you folks that aren't necessarily in the US, it's a little harder to find some of these events, but they're out there. If something is drivable for you, especially if it's while the weather's nice and the drive is going to be, pretty and enjoyable, go to events. Go to a fish swap. You will find amazing deals. You'll find crazy people like Bentley who show up with massive bags of plants that they sell for dirt cheap. You'll find people that sell shrimp at great prices. You'll find people that have a fish you didn't even know was near you, but you've kind of always thought was interesting, that now you have an ability to get a hold of. You will find all sorts of crazy nonsense that you would never expect at these events. And you'll get to meet amazing people that you might not have otherwise got to meet. And those events, I assure you, will only make parts of your hobby better. Because deep down, all of us nerds who are into these little hobbies with other nerds love nothing more than to babble about why we love this hobby. And when you get us all together, we babble like crazy idiots, and it's fantastic. And those are the things that ring out about why you love certain things. So worth it. There's Sid Miller just said, mine was on the other side of my city, but it was super worth it. Aquaball says, we have a frog festival coming near Fountain Valley, California on the 29th. And for Lady Diana's correct, you can go to some of these events as a vendor too, and you can also make a surprising amount of money. I have done multiple videos now where I've talked about going to swaps as a plant seller and using some of the same strategies that I use and easily making $300 or $400 in a day. Easy. It's not hard. These events are fantastic, whether you want to go purely as a person that wants to enjoy stuff, or as a person who like has already been enjoying this hobby. You're kind of deep. Maybe you breed fish. Maybe you breed shrimp. Maybe you don't. Maybe you only breed snails. Guess what? Being the snail vendor at a swap is actually pretty freaking lucrative. I know someone who is a huge snail breeder in Washington, and she goes to swaps all the time. She brings like a few fish and then a ton of like mystery snails and ram's horn snails and assassin snails and all this stuff. And she makes a killing because she's the only one selling snails. And a lot of us hobbyists are like, I can always use some snails. Or you'll have people like Leo who got a puffer who's like, puffer food, perfect. Or you'll have that person who's like, yeah, I want mystery snails, but I only ever see this one color at my local fish store. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I have 4, 5, 6 different colors. What do you want? Right? Whatever it may be. These are the kind of things that happen at these swaps, and they're fantastic and they're wonderful. So with that, I would say if you ever have a chance, whether it's a local club auction, a local swap, some smaller kind of the kind of micro weekend conventions where they have a vendor room, go to these events, have some fun, talk to some people, maybe make some money if you're the more adventurous types, or find some fantastic deals, because there will always be fantastic deals, especially toward the end of any given event when people are like, I don't know if I really want to take all this stuff home. You can snipe some incredible deals, and that's the best time to strike. So that's my spiel. There's no opposite side to this one. It's just pure advocate. No devil's advocate today. It's all positive today. Okay, so we got some super chats to catch up on. As always, at Bentley Pasco makes it way easier to see your questions. We'll go to question and answer now. Richard Reynolds, real fast. Have you ever raised moina for live food? I'm trying my first culture. Any tips for me? I've never done those. So I got no help. The only things I've tried to do, Daphnia, minor success. It was purely accidental, basically, not intentional success. When I was intentionally trying to do um, a big Daphnia culture, I had it alive for a while, and then it went south, and all the things that I did accidentally were really successful. I've kept I culture vinegar eels really, really well, just because they're very easy. They're probably the simplest one to do. I've yet to try paramecium. That's been the other one that I'm interested in doing. And then, of course, like brine shrimp, but I don't want to keep a consistent culture. I want the constant live baby brine, just because that's good small fish food. Scotty the fish freak. How about Keystone Clash? Yes, of course, the Clash. Clash is kind of becoming like a medium-sized event at this point, right? It's bigger than some of the small events, but still small at heart. Small at heart. What was the was the Quad City swap? I don't know if folks saw like some of the stuff from TM Aquatics and stuff, but that looked wild, dude. I wish I could have gone to that event. I wish I lived near that event because that looked fantastic as like a psycho fish nerd, as something to go to or be a part of. Unfortunately, there were some nefarious things that happened there. Somebody stole some plecos from poor Tom, and I feel bad for Tom. But other than that, like big event, super fun. These events are wonderful. They're just wonderful. Go to them, have fun, run into dum dums like me, and just babble. It's a blast. Leo 209, the truest abuser of the bat phone. The man understands what he could take advantage of. Your first question: are CO2 drop checkers worth it? To me, no. But I'm how to put this, because I go by my low and slow method of CO2, where I'm not worried about hitting any target amount, and I really do very low levels. Um, they're useless to me. They don't tell me anything. Basically put, if you're trying to do higher CO2 levels without getting dangerous, then that's where they're a reasonable indicator. If you're trying to like always stay in that like 30 to 35 parts per million range, that's where I think drop checkers are useful. But if you're trying to follow like my method, the low and slow American barbecue style for CO2, you're wasting money with a drop checker. It's gonna always say you don't have enough. It's like it's just how it is. Also, the Skull Creek apparently love the co-op tube effects. Lots of fish love tube effects. Just putting that out there. Rainbows are lovely idiots, and that they will eat almost anything and then still act like they've never eaten in their lives. And they're such little piggies. It's kind of great. And then Leo had a super chat. Hi, I'm Leo. I have multiple tank syndrome, and I have abused the bat line. Do it again every damn time. At least you admit to your faults. It's okay, buddy. Paul Saltero, the Aquatic Expo is happening in Charlotte, June 10th and 11th. LRB, Mr. Lucas Bretz, the aquarium hoarder himself, will be one of the speakers. Still undecided if I'm going to it as an 8-hour round trip, so we'll have to stay overnight. I mean, yeah, I get that in that you do need to stay overnight, but I would make an 8-hour round trip. But I'm a psycho, so I would do it. But it also depends on what other travel plans you have. Because, like, Paul, I think you're going to the Clash. So, it's one of those things where you look at your time and costs and all those things, and you'll decide. I'd be curious, because, like, Charlotte can be a lot of fun, too. Like, Charlotte's a really cool city. Could be fun. Could be fun. I'm very curious, like, what other, for those of you who have local swaps and stuff like that, what do you have? I would love to know. Chat, let me know. Leo 209, always causing problems. Saw that Dancefish still has 5 left of the Skull Creek. Should I pull the trigger, not trying to overstock that tank since adding 2 more puffers? Like, you just added 2 more puffers, or you intend to add 2 more puffers? I mean, it depends on your filtration and your maintenance, Leo. As long as you're keeping up with your maintenance and water changes, adding a few more Skull Creeks probably won't be too hard because they're a smaller rainbow, right? They don't get super big. They're not going to put out a massive bioload like puffers will. Puffers create much bigger bioloads, just because of the way that they eat and the Cheetos that they poop out. Let's just be honest, all right? Especially them big boy puffers. Good lord. But I would just kind of monitor, look at how often. I would say look at the first time, maybe this weekend, right? Clean your filter out and see how much detritus it's gathering already, and look at how long it's been running. And that might help you determine, like, is it worth adding these extra fish, or kind of guess when you add the extra puffers what that's going to look like. And then maybe that'll influence your decision. That's how I would do it. That's the way I'd approach it. Caitlin, was good to see you at the auction. It was a pleasure talking with you. I found that spotted Congos are the exact same way, or at least mine is, between the puffer and the rainbows. Leo's tank is a bottomless pit. Yeah. I had this interesting discussion with somebody where, it's kind of, some puffers can be pretty notorious when it comes to, basically, like, if you put too many snails in, they'll just murder every snail, even though they don't eat them all. Because it's their natural hunting instinct to just continuously hunt these things, because in the wild, they're not as prevalent, right, as we can make them in a small glass box. They have to move and do lots of more things to get those. So, I have heard from friends that when they, were like, I'm just going to put in, 100 ram's horn snails, and that'll feed this puffer for a long period of time. 2 days later, every ram's horn snail in the tank was dead. And not all of them had been eaten. So, keep that in mind. Think about those things. All right. just keep that in mind. They can do that. But yeah, they're hungry little buddies. It's funny when I go up to the co-op every once in a while, and just, especially if I get there mid-afternoon and see Murphy with just this enormous belly, just laying on the substrate, I could eat another clam or 6. Good lord, Puffer. Good lord. You look like you've eaten a house, and you're just I could do more. Well, that's kind of how those fish are designed to live, right? Ooh, Bryant Kim, we've got the Flower City Frag Fest here in Rochester, New York. Mostly saltwater, but I was one of 3 freshwater vendors selling plants and did pretty well. There you go. If you're up in the Rochester area, Flower City Frag Fest. There is freshwater too. Sounds pretty great. One of my best friends grew up in that area. So that's kind of cool to know that there's something up in that part, the more upstate New York. It makes sense. New York's got a reasonable amount of fish keeping in its blood inherently. It was a big mecca, especially the New York City area in New Jersey, for keeping in the 70s and stuff. John Morgan, any chance of you coming to Dallas for Aquashella? Our disco party fire eel tank is doing horrible. The majority of our plants are disappearing. Definitely not this year, John, just because, again, having been laid off, I now, every budget that I might have had for travel is just out the freaking window. And the Clash is the only thing that I've already just, paid everything for because I'm speaking at it. If I was being sponsored to go there, maybe. But travel's expensive, man. My goal originally was, just because this year was supposed to be crazy busy for work, and now needing to find new work. It'll probably become crazy busy again. Um, I was originally looking at not doing much more than probably the Clash and Fishtoberfest this year, but next year trying to do one of the Aquashellas, and I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do Dallas or Chicago. Um, Dallas is probably an easier flight, but I haven't figured that out yet. It's kind of one of those things where I'm trying to figure those things out, but any extra plans I might have had this year just got like hucked right out the window, unfortunately, because I had looked at it. I will be honest, like I was looking at a calendar and I'm like, yeah, I could kind of make this work. It's between this, and I think that works monetarily speaking. And then it's like, no, never mind. Nothing works monetarily speaking anymore. Such is life. Sometimes it gives you an old kick to remind you got to stay on your toes. Sid Miller. In Australia, the groups are pretty sparse, but we have the Angfa, right? I love those people. Obviously, it's the rainbow fish people and other Australian New Guinea fishes, and the cichlid auctions and meetings and online shrimp groups. Do the shrimp people show up at some of the other like auctions? So like for Angfa or cichlid, if they do their events, do you have shrimp people that also show up to those? Because they happen to cross over and like, I keep shrimp and cichlids, or I keep shrimp and rainbow fish or gudgeons or whatever. I'd be curious to know about that. Like, how often do you have some crossover? Even though a lot of those species eat shrimp. It's my problem as a rainbow fish keeper. I don't get to keep a lot of shrimp. Also, I'm bad at shrimp. We've well documented that at this point, right, folks? But because I keep rainbows in so many tanks, it really limits where I can keep shrimp. Because rainbows are like, that's a tasty snack. Humph, and we'll destroy a shrimp population very, very fast. Nabokov fan. No spoilers if you don't want to, but I have to ask what your initial reaction was to the mods I sent. So, as preface here, Nabokov fan on the Aquarium Co-op forum has this like lengthy thread about modifying the title hang-on back filter. And after being done with one of them, sent it to me. So I received this, I think it showed up Saturday. Maybe it was Friday last week. I think it was Friday. Time's blurring together. You'll have to forgive me a little bit here. And I opened it up, and there was this nice packet of information and discussion about the modifications and some of the problems that occasionally get encountered and all these things from what Nabokov's fans' experiments were. I haven't pulled it completely out yet. I read your packet. I set it back down and was like, I'm going to need more than like 10 minutes to take a look at this bad boy. After reading your packet, I was like, I need to go gather a lot of plants and do this and that for my auction. So initial reaction is I appreciate the packet of information. I haven't dug in too deep yet. Paul Saltero, Charlotte will only happen if my cruise director can sync it up with a visit with friends that live in the area. That seems okay. Leo209. Whoop, chat jumps as I miss things. Fluval, Nutrifin, or Sarah Master Test Kit. These are different things. I'm so confused. Wait a minute. Make sure that my brains remember it correctly. Right? Literally have to look this up now. See how much you're confusing me? Oh, it's okay. I'm thinking Nutrifin like one of the food products, and I was like, what are you talking about? They're kind of similar in the grand scheme of things. The only thing that I would maybe say is that I have seen more reviews questioning the accuracy of the Sarah kits than I have of the Fluval, but maybe that's just because not a lot of people have access to the Fluval. The one that I like is the JBL one, but it's really hard to find those. As far as that, or honestly, just if you're going to start spending that much money, you could import from Poland a small photospectrometer and go real high tech. Could go real crazy. Caitlin with extra feedback. He hasn't left anything behind yet. He ate at least 7 large ram swords the first night. I had my snail farm in his tank before removing them and missed that many, apparently. Oh boy. Another one. Leo wants my opinion on everything. I find it hilarious. What's your opinion on aquachar? So aquachar is, if I remember right, just carbon, right? It's fancy named carbon. I don't use it. The only time I would ever use carbon is if I really needed to be absolutely certain I have removed any excess or leftover medicine from a tank after a water change. But I typically don't use any of the super aggressive medications, because typically if something is at a case where it needs that hyper aggressive medication, it's a higher risk to hurt more of my tank than it is to dose that medication, if that makes sense. So usually, like, I'll remove a fish, and I've frankly never dealt with something so aggressive that I needed to dose a really crazy med. And I think of something like not triple sulfa, but oh my goodness, my brain is going completely blank. There is one medication that is basically just like you are nuking the tank. It's like chemotherapy levels of like just scorched earth policy. And my brain is forgetting that medication because it's become harder to get a hold of. But yeah, that's that's kind of how I look at it. I guess if you were dealing with like really huge issues early on in a tank, you could use carbon. But most of those carbon products also are going to mess with like all the things you need to make your plants successful. And I would rather just like figure out the balance on my own and use my plants than to like dump a bunch of carbon in a filter and be like, you're going to do the trick and also screw my plants over at the same time. So yeah, that's how I look at it. All right, so like there's me, the one crazy shrimp guy, 5 species and 2 tanks. But yeah, I picked up some red nose shrimp, and there were also some black crystals and skittle neos. What? I'm Stephen P. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Is the mod a skimmer turner offer? I mean, I'm assuming you mean removing the skimmer. Yes, I believe that's part of the modifications. Maybe we'll talk about this thing in whole in like its own video, because Nabokov fan went pretty crazy with this bad boy. I joke you not, chat. There is a packet. It's like 10 pages, back to back, of details on the modifications, the experimentation that Nabokov fan has done so far. Everything. It's more in depth than I would go. Also, because I'm bad at DIY, so you know. I think the manual is great personally, but you know that's me. That's me. All right. Oh, did I actually catch up a chat? Can miracles happen? Rocky and Miles, the plumbing on my street and in the neighborhood is being replaced, and the estimated working time is 4 months? How do I know if this will affect my water? Wow, that's... So the first thing I would do, Rocky and Miles, contact your water company. Let them know that you are a fish keeper. And maybe be a little excessive about your fish keeping. Why I say this. Years ago, I called my local water company, and I had this like out of nowhere outbreak of algae in a bunch of tanks. And there was nothing I could see in my tests that looked different. but there was a big TDS spike that had occurred. So I was trying to find out what the heck the water company had done and if I needed to account for this permanently or it was something else, whatever. Turns out like they flush the pipes a couple times a year. However, because I was really emphatic that like, hey, I understand that normally you test things based on like human drinking safety for potable water, but I'm a fish keeper. So things that may be safe for humans might not be safe for my fish. And I have, you know, literally thousands of gallons of fish tanks in my house and hundreds and hundreds of very expensive fish. I need to know these things. What this resulted in, I'm flagged. My house is flagged in my water company along with a few others. And when a couple times a year, when they're about to flush the pipes that they do to help these things, they send a tech out to my house. This one guy has been to my house the last 4 years, 2 to 3 times a year, and he does a special flush of the piping in my cul-de-sac that just pours, I mean, tons of water through the system and into the local storm drain in order to make sure that no buildup of extra mineral content or any of the things that they use that are human drinking safe are in my water when I put them in my fish tanks. Contact your local water company. Talk to your local water company. If you let them know, hey, I'm a fish keeper. If you do X, Y, or Z, whether that's like you flush your things or maybe a couple times a year you put this safe to drink compound in that helps protect pipes, whatever it may be, I would like to know if there's a way to get an alert, to get on a list, whatever it may be that sends me an email, something automated so that I know, so that I never have to worry about those things, or so that I know like, hey, don't put fresh water in your tank for this week because we're doing this. Because water companies do not want you to be that one person that comes and sues them because your thousands of fish at retail price X died. Right? They don't want that. Water companies run on kind of slim margins. So I encourage you, the new video, the water company trick, you might be right. I probably should do something like that. Now, granted, if you're in a well or something like that, you're not having that problem. But what I would encourage you to do, Rocky and Miles, call your water company. Let them know, hey, I'm a fish keeper. I keep 45 tanks, whatever the heck it may be, right? If it's only 6, tell them it's like 20. Just lie a little. It's all right. They won't know. But I would wholeheartedly tell you, like, hey, I understand there's a bunch of maintenance happening. I want to know whether or not I need to be careful about the water that I'm putting into my aquariums to make sure it's safe for my fish. And they'll work with you. It might be hard. Sometimes it's hard to contact them. Sometimes you got to go like in a screaming fit or something. There's ways to get a hold of them. Thankfully, like my water company is a smaller water company that's an offshoot of like the larger water company in the Seattle area. So if you happen to live with the Seuss Creek Water Company, if you happen to live like right near Bentley in the area of Washington I live in, call them. They'll hook you up. They're great. But it's funny because like the last time that tech came out was the first time I got to talk to him in person, and I didn't know. I thought they did something different to flush it. So like I was walking out to go, I think I was going to meet a friend or something for lunch. And I'm walking out and there's this guy in my cul-de-sac and he's just got water flying out of the little manhole grid that's in the center of our cul-de-sac basically. And he's just got this big truck just dumping tons of water through it and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, hey, is everything okay? And the only reason I asked is because I know that one of the guys in my neighborhood, one of his pipes burst when it froze a while back, and I was worried that maybe they had to do something or something had gone wrong again. My poor neighbor, maybe it had something else go horribly wrong. And he was like, "Oh no, you still keep all the fish tanks, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Oh yeah, you're one of like 20 people in our company that's like literally marked down that we come through and we do these flushes out to make sure the pipes are good for you because you keep a bunch of fish." He's like, I've been the same guy who's basically done it every time for your house. And I've seen you've got like some spare aquariums on your front porch and stuff. When I've come and knocked, just to let people know, hey, I'm doing this. And it's always been, I think, either maybe it's your wife or your roommate, or I'm like, yeah, my wife or probably my brother-in-law. And it's like, yeah. So I've always run into them because usually you're gone working, but I guess you're not this day when I'm here. Nice to meet you. We talked. He used to keep fish. Just like the weirdest things, right? Call your water company. This is the longest version of call your water company I think I could possibly do. We know I talk too much. Welcome to Bentley. It's a wild ride sometimes. All right, this brain just doesn't shut off. Oh man, maybe that's the next video I'm gonna do. But yeah, ever since I did that, I have never had mass algae breakouts in all of my tanks. Never. I'll get one in one tank every once in a while. Algae's going to happen. Algae's natural part of nature. You can't ever have no algae. There's going to be some small amounts, and occasionally you'll get something. But yeah, never had that mass outbreak where it just hit like every tank in my house at once and made me like get super paranoid something had gone horribly wrong. Oh man. Okay. But yeah, water company's pretty sweet to me, at least. I'll put it that way. Nabokov fans started this insane update in May 18th of 2022. So we're almost at a year on this bad boy now that's in my hands. And now I get to have fun with this dumb thing. Sal Pal, the tank behind me needs a little TLC. I actually plan on taking this thing down relatively soon. It has seen better days. You can actually see like the divider, the plastic divider is like misaligned. It's come off of its silicone. Number of things. So I either need to like take it down and do what Irene did to her flex and completely remove the back chamber and change it into something else, or find some other solution. But that tank will eventually come down. I do leave algae on the glass on purpose. There's a pleco in there, and he grazes on that stuff. One of these days, I might go do like the super clean on it, though. Who knows? Who knows? Like right before I tear it apart. Rocky Miles, thank you for the super chat. Yeah, totally call your water company. Hopefully they can help steer you in the right direction. Laura Bustos, like, I better call these people. They've got the big tank right next to my house. Yeah, totally. Geek Boy in Aruba. Rough life. Rough life. Enjoy that vacation, man. Enjoy it. Caitlin, do you know of any swaps or events around here still? I need to find more fish nerd friends. Unfortunately, so there used to be a swap in Auburn, and then the North Sound Aquarium Society for a while did a swap up in Everett. All of those shut down basically with the pandemic. The Auburn one shut down a little bit beforehand because of some problems with the place that they've been running it out of. Even though we had booked it for a day, they double booked the room. I remember this really distinctly because I was there, and like all of a sudden all these people started coming in and it's like trying to set up shop at like 2:30, and we had a hard cutoff of not like end the swap at 3. We had to be broken down entirely and out at 3 o'clock. And we had been at this, I think it's at Eagles, if I remember correctly. We'd been at this Eagles for years, and it was like I think only the second or third one I did as a vendor, And it was like, so wait a minute, I need to basically, I get here and the thing opens at 10 a.m. and I have to be completely broken down and out of the building by 3. So I adjusted my prices and was like selling like a madman. I sold everything so cheap compared to what I normally would because I wanted to be out the door at 2. And come 1:30, I was sold completely out. I stayed around for a little bit to talk to some friends. I helped one friend like sell some of his excess plants and then got out of Dodge because it was a problem. The people who were organizing it were like, yeah, we're never going to do this again. Just there's no other place that's reasonably cheap that makes it cost efficient. And now we're done. So unfortunately, they're dead. I think somebody needs to start figuring that out again. Oh. Uh-oh. Greg Jones. What's up, buddy? For my first 10 years of fish keeping, I avoided joining a club. I didn't see any point in paying when they didn't offer anything for me, but I recently joined a family-friendly club. Fish clubs are changing, getting younger, more events, more things to do together, starting to get involved and make it better for everyone. I agree. I'm very fortunate in that because I'm in the greater Seattle area and I have the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. They're one of the biggest clubs, honestly, in the U.S. And, you know, they're not as big as like Maasai or the San Francisco Club. Those clubs are huge. I found out recently that the one that the Garden of Eder is a part of. So down there, it's I think it's like the Pasco County, which is kind of funny that it's similar to my last name, Fish Society or whatever. Their meetings and auctions are crazy down there. So yeah, I would love like more fish swaps to be happening. I know the person who used to organize the ones up in Everett, they were great because it was we'd do them out. They were outside, which you might be a little like kind of about that, but they were done in like June, so the weather's nice, but not too hot, and stuff like that. I'm sure there's got to be some way to get some stuff going. I actually talked to, I think it was Bob Steenfot reasonably. I have to think a minute on that to make sure that's correct, but I'm pretty sure it was Bob Steenfot about how we needed more things up in Washington and in the Northwest in general, in order to just have like cooler, more frequent events and things that we miss from pre-pandemic event times when there was a little bit more stuff going on before like the world halted, so to speak, right? But yeah, I think clubs are definitely evolving. It's really cool to see some of the larger clubs setting really great examples. So like Maasai streaming almost all their speakers is fantastic. You know, things like that are wonderful because it gets more people into the hobby, especially if there's outreach with local fish stores and things like that. You can get more people deeply engaged into the hobby. You know, folks like Caitlin, who like only recently started coming to events and things like that. Like Caitlin, you're a perfect example, right? I got an opportunity to sit and talk with you because you like ran into some dummy on the internet and was like, he just doesn't stop babbling about this damn club in Seattle and all these cool events. So I'll go check them out myself, you know. But I think as the clubs evolve, it will get better. The hard part is in places where there aren't clubs is getting enough people that are willing to put in the work to build them, because it is a lot of work to build a fish club. But if you have thriving fish stores in your area and there's not a club, there are people to make a club. It's just slowly building it up, and that can be tough. It can be really tough, but it's doable. If you got enough gumption, it's doable. Caitlin, speaking of, GSAS would probably get a lot more interest if their meetings were a more reasonable daytime. And Bob's talking about stuff like that as well, so it probably was him. Yeah, I think the thing that kills me, they still live off of like Tuesday evening meetings. I might actually start fighting the board about those things. Okay, secret time. Last thing we'll talk about for the night. I'm still in all the GSAS board meeting emails, even though I've never been a member of the board. So I might be trying to push, because I think if they repolled the membership as a whole, they would find that the reason why a lot of people aren't coming to meetings is because they're Tuesday at 7 o'clock at night in the middle of Seattle, which is a nightmare of traffic to go through. When I was going to meetings and working, and I was working in Bellevue, mind you, I would have to leave work at 4 p.m. to deal with all the traffic, get myself some dinner, and be able to attend a meeting that started at 7 in a place that, in theory, without traffic, is only a 20-minute drive. They didn't have a club meeting today, but the club meetings are always the second Tuesday of every month, except the months where we have certain events. I think they had a board meeting today though, and those are all done on like Zoom because it's just like the board and whoever wants to decide to attend. But yeah, they're just traffic is a nightmare nowadays. Nobody wants to deal with that nonsense going into like the middle of Seattle, not far from the Space Needle, where it's super busy. Like, nobody wants to do that nonsense. Like, come on, man. The fact that a bunch of us do is like, yeah, we're just that crazy. Legion Aquatics. I recently got my first guppies. Do I have to mix new ones in to avoid lots of inbreeding? What do you do with your guppies? I am very lucky in that my line is very solid, so I don't need to mix them. It really depends on how deep down the line, right, they've been bred to get what they are. So a lot of those really cool designer guppies that come from Thailand and stuff like that, they're heavily inbred. And basically what I would look for is this. Breed them together. Your first batch of babies, maybe separate the female, right? And if you can, get those babies in their own tank and start raising them up. In about 2 months, you'll be able to tell how often is the color wrong. Are you having bent spines, other health issues, whatever it may be, things that we would call culls. You might not cull them, that's fine. But just look at that rate. Is it 95% or higher that they are what you're expecting and healthy? Then you're okay. What I have found with my particular guppies is maybe 1 in 100 fish is a cull for usually color, and that their color doesn't look right. I almost never get bent spines. I think I've had maybe 2 bendy spine fish the whole time I've kept these fish. They're just an incredibly robust line of fish. But that's not the same for every type of guppy. So those are the ways that I would gauge to determine whether or not you need to like bring other stock in. And often, if you can get females that are very close, you don't need to change the males out as long as the males are healthy, because almost all the color and everything is determined by a male in guppies. If you want a better advice, find a really good guppy breeder because they know a lot more than I do. I just casually keep my guppies because I love them so much. And occasionally sell them when I can make time to deliver them to Jason at Redfish Bluefish. All right. Yeah, so Caitlin DeRozier, the one meeting I went to, I didn't get home until 10 p.m. I worked the next day, and 10 p.m. is kind of late for a work night. Yeah, I mean, I very often would get out of meetings and not get home until midnight, sometimes even later on a big meeting, like if Gary Lang was in town, for example, and the auctions go super long. And I would be sleeping like 2-3 hours and then needing to get up for work the next day. It's just, ugh. So that's part of why like I've been much more choosy about my meetings lately, because it's just a matter of like it takes a lot of extra time, and I value my sleep even though I don't get all that much of it. Kenny from Daniken Aquatics, what's up, brother? Thank you for the super chat right at the tail end. Let me see here. Had one last question I want to answer, and then we'll be done for the night. Leo209, as always, Leo, the truest user of the Bentley Bat Phone. Hey man, you're doing it right. I'm just putting it that way. You understand that there is a benefit to being a member, and you're using it, and I appreciate that. One last thing, those titanium heaters with temp controller, you don't need another controller, right, since it will shut off. Assuming that the controller functions as it should, where it's got a probe and a shutoff, yes, you should just need the built-in controller. But if it's in the housing and not an external probe, then I would use a different controller. if you're gonna go the full paranoid route. Usually the titanium heaters are really solid though, and you don't have to worry about them. So yeah, there you go. There you go. Legion Clocks. Thanks, Bentley. Also, one more thing. If I feed extreme community flakes as a main food with frozen mixed in, will that be fine? Or should I feed types of food? Honestly, that's good. Rob. I basically almost exclusively feed the community crave to mine because it's a good mix of veg and protein. And then I do frozen about once a week. And when I'm doing live baby brine every once in a while, then of course I feed live baby brine every time I can because it's fantastic. But I think it'll be fine. I think that's a good mix for guppies. Don't stress. If you want to do a big like crazy mix of things, feel free to. But if you don't want to, just pay attention to your fish, right? Have a fasting day like once a week. It's good for your fish. Helps them make sure they don't get any kind of clogs or anything like that going on, right? Make everything go out of the system. You'll be okay. Smells like MTS in here. You're one to talk, Rob. If you don't, and you like a little raunchier fun, I highly encourage you to listen to the Aquarium Guys podcast. They have some amazing guests in there, and are overall just funny gents. If you like your comedy slightly less family friendly. All right, gang. As always, I've had a blast this Tuesday. We'll be back next Tuesday per usual, and be looking forward to this weekend's video. I've got a lot of editing to do, but gang, thank you so much as always for being here. I appreciate super chats from Leo209, Rocky and Miles, Danica Aquatics, and Rob Olson. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, my friends, stay awesome. And go to a club if you got one. Just do it. Do it.